Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 14, Week 2, Power Rankings. Weeks 2 of 8 are done. That is a quarter of the way through the season. Did we actually learn anything yet, or are we still just guessing? I am your host, IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. I'm joined today, of course, as always, by SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
Well, we've got a ton of matches to go through, no transactions beforehand, so let's go into Week 2. We've got the Calgary Cor, and the Kanto Kinglers, and the Corviknights are going to come out ahead of the Crabs 4-0 with neither of them bringing the sun. Turn 1, the Corviknight get up the rocks, that's all. And by the way, the Kinglers pin missile into their own Armourouge, hitting 3 times, proccing Armourouge's weakness policy all 3 times to max its speed, while also clicking Calm Mind. That is a large Armourouge. The follow-up Armor Cannon does 2/3 to Duraludon. The follow-up Volt Switch doesn't do enough to take it down, so Duraludon Iron Defenses, and Garganacci Salt Cure to 77% to Armourouge. That's what -4 defense does to you. Fake out Garganackle. Tailwind up from Salamence, and Stone Edge only does 25% to Salamence from Duraludon. Walking Wake in for Grimmsnarl. Salamance's Dragon Cheer goes off into it. Body Press into Salamence, who still has some health, but Salt Cure into the newly minted Walking Wake. Huge chip every turn with Red Card, switching out Garg for Pex. Draco crits into that Pex, but cannot KO it. Flamethrower doesn't KO Duraludon either, so the double of into Wake will KO it. Pex poisons Grim, and Duraludon finally goes down the final turn of Tailwind. So here's round 2 as Pex is taunted, and Salamence holds on with a sliver after Salt Cure. He'll go down next turn, and Electivire comes in next to Jolteon. Discharge spam time, doing about half to both Garganacci and Klefki, but they're both Salt Cured, so Electivire swaps out and Jolteon Volt switches. The manual Sandstorm from Klefki, that is cool. It goes down the next turn, but so does Electivire. So Sandy Shocks finishes off Jolteon. Garganacci handles Grimmsnarl after recovering up, so that'll do it. The Sun Battle ends in Sandstorm. Calgary remaining undefeated. Next match, it's Steve's favorite team, the Buffalo Bouffalant, steamrolling over my favorite jungler's team, the Pikeville Pups. Turn 1, Sunny Day from Skyman sets up a powerful Heatwave from Chiyu. Claude's Hair at half, Tinglu at 20%. Jeez, rocks are up and toxic on Chiyu, but that's some damage. Double switch into Slowbro and D-Knight as Shaman actually sets up a growth. Another Heatwave doing 2/3 to Slowbro and 1/3 to D-Knight, but that's a burn on the Dragon too. Blissey for Slowbro, D-Knight goes down to Air Slash, and Blissey takes half from his special move. Oh my goodness, and a burn. That means Skyman growths again as Chiyu picks up the double KO. Iron Leaves finally ends its terror, but Skyman just KOs that too. Hoopa Unbound will help finish things. It and Skyman finish off the last 2 mons. What a clean, quick W for my Bouffalant. Next match, things have been going too much according to script. Time for a little bit of a shake-up. The Close Combat Club, off a pretty embarrassing L Week 1, finally rights the ship in Week 2 against a Wooper Boopers team that was riding high off a strong start themselves. Turn 1, Fake Out from Hitmontop into Hydreigon, but the Covert Cloak, Taunt into Dusclops, stops the Trick Room, and Knockoff from Tinkaton drops the EVL Light. Tinkaton into Lando, Dusclops into Arbolifa to tank the Dark Pulse, and top into Necrozma. Lando, Terra Blast, and Hydreigon double pulse, double up into the Necrozma, but it lives the hit. Arboliva's Pollen Puff does 2/3 to Hydreigon as Necrozma also gets off the Trick Room. Lando protect Hydreigon into Tinkaton. Arboliva heals Necrozma this turn, which sets up a strong Reflect. Arboliva into Hitmontop, Dark Pulse from Necro into Lando doesn't do too much. Necro gets chipped. Necrozma into Prim, Lando into Politoed, and Tink gets another knockoff, getting rid of Prim's weakness policy. Perimeter gets good chip into Tinkaton and Toad, but gets put to sleep by Hypnosis while Tinkaton SD's up. Trick Room is over, but Dusclops is out. How about another Hypnosis as Tinkaton gets some chip on the Clops, KOing it next turn. However, Primarina also wakes up, bringing Tinkaton very low and KOing Hydreigon, who is in for the Politoed. Necrozma and Braviary in. Necrozma cannot stave off any damage from the +2 Tinkaton, going down even with the Fairy Terra, but Hitmontop and Primarina do finally put down the Tinkaton. But Politoed comes back in, so that helping hand into Primarina doesn't matter. Hisuian Braviary crits the Hurricane into it, so down goes the biggest threat to the club. Another Hurricane the next turn, Oko's Vigavolt 2, Hitmontop is asleep, so another 2 turns of Hurricanes from Hisuian Braviary takes it for the club. Tinkaton and Braviary, the unlikely heroes, their first W of the season. Next match, the Incineroar continue their impressive start. It's a 5-0 over the Bouldors. Turn 1, Talonflame is off the ground, so it's not immune to Fake Out, and then 2 spread moves doing damage. Expanding Force almost half to Mamoswine and bringing Talonflame critically low, while the Mamoswine EQ does 2/3 to Iron Crowns and 1/3 to Indeedee. But the speed advantage is with the Incineroar. Mamo swaps into Suicune, but Talon Terra's Dark. Helping Hand Expanding Force does nothing, and 41 into Suicune, but no Tailwind. Instead, it's a Heatwave. However, that red card from Suicune works against Sasbo, and Indeedee is dragged in instead of Iron Crown, which will live. Talon out for Comfey, which procs a Psychic Seed for its Spadef. Nice tech. Snarl from Suicune looks big in reducing power output, but Hat sets up the Trick Room. Floral healing the Suicune back to full. Helping Hand Expanding Force does 1/3 to both the Boulder response as Suicune roars out Indeedee into Typhlosion. That switches right back out into Superior as Hat reverses the Trick Room. Very smart. Suicune out into Talonflame as Comfey heals it up, but Leaf Storm run into that slot. Talonflame is down as Hat's Life Dew brings the Incineroar's side back up to full. Another wasted turn as Terra Stellar +2 Leaf Storm. Oko's the Helping Handed Ninetales Alola. Another great play from the Incineroar. Raging Bolt is in, tanks a Terra with half its health up. T-Bolt only does Life Dew damage into Superior. That's all Hat's going to be doing. Superior targeting Comfey now. now. No Discharge Bear from Raging Bolt. Snow working against the boulders as Synthesis will not heal enough. Leaf Storm will KO the Comfey, but T-Bolt does a ton to Raging Bolt through D-Gleam, bring Raging Bolt to about half 2. Suicune in protects, another discharge KOs happens, Superior remains limber. Indeedee in, Giga Drain KOs Suicune and Mamo as the Wincon is now Clam Mind with 2 in a row for Raging Bolt. One more discharge, still no Paris, never lucky. Superior dominates for the Incineroar this time. Fifth match of 9 halfway through, it's Steve's Waterdeep Wobbuffets getting on the board after a tight 2-0 win over those pesky Baltimore Orcorios. Before the match, you'd have probably thought this would have been a bigger win for the Wobbuffets. What happened? We'll be turning to Michael, coach of the Route 1 Burps, to take a deeper look at this one as the match of the week. We're going to look at crits, secondary effects, gravity? We'll see what that was about in this match. Next set, this one was highly anticipated, the Terrifier Heatwave, still yet to drop a set in their WCL career. This one was a huge W over the Route 1 Burbs. Turn 1 Kingambit protects, which means it's not hitting into the Iron Valiant Destiny Bond, but Deoxys defense with a huge taunt into Reuniclus to stop Trick Room. Double switch into Thunderous T and Ogerpon, but Thundy takes over half from CC and Deoxys gets up rocks. Thundy Agility's Psycho Boost does a third into Ogerpon, plus Shiftry switches in. Amugasin for Deoxys, and Shiftry takes over half from a T-Bolt, but even worse, it gets full parried. Psychic and Zen Headbutt double up into Amoonguss, but it lives on 1%. Shiftry KOs Thundy and Amoonguss gets damage and switches out with Leaf Storm. Iron Valiant KOs Ogerpon with Dazzling Gleam as Terra Steel Latios T-Waves Iron Valiant, but Shiftry with a Tailwind. Iron Valiant fully parried Reflect Latios lets Reuniclus survive knockoff and get up Trick Room. The Heatwave double switch and the Helping Hand Reuniclus Fire Punch bounces off Deoxys. The other slot was Amoonguss, which doubles into Shiftry on the Psychic, and Deoxys taunts the Latios. Shiftry and Deoxys KO the Reuniclus, who can't get a hit thanks to Fake Out. Kingambit KOs Shiftry. Volcarona quivers up as Trick Room ends, but Iron Bundle is in with a booster to speed. Harkonine in the other slot KOs Kingambit, and Iron Bundle with the Encore into Volcarona as Harkonine gets another KO on the Steel-type Latios. Means it's just a matter of time until the Protect Elect Volcarona goes down too. Amazing showing from the Heatwave. Who's going to stop them? Next match, it's the Agrons continuing their regular season rampage by blowing out the suddenly struggling Corviknight Clobberers. Thundy is taunted, which explains why it would fling that big nugget into the Deoxys Speed's Focus Sash. Scizor gets up Tailwind, but Weezing burns that Scizor for its trouble. The following Bullet Punch goes into Incineroar. Supercell Slam goes into Weezing, but the physical Thundy also gets burned here too. Double switch into Florges and Gastrodon, the latter taunted by Weezing. D-Gleam doesn't do much, but Weezing does all of Florges' remaining health with Gunk Shot. Icy Wind from Gastro does a bit, but Incin cycles out anyways. Weezing out from Cress. Gastro loses its item. Cress parried by Thundy, and Icy Wind takes down Deoxys. Cornerstone is out and parried too, but it SD's up, and Cresselia gets off Trick Room. Terra Rock helps Cornerstone tank a Bullet Punch easily. Then easily Oko Scizor back as Cress heals up itself and its partner. Machigacha might be the Clobberer's last hope, but it misses Ogerpon. Helping Hand Ivy Cudgel Oko the Sinistra as Thundy is just flailing around burned. Roaring Moon and Thunderous keep chipping away at Ogerpon, but another Ivy Cudgel Oko's Roaring Moon too. This mount is on a rampage. Gastro's Earth Power finally ends its terror, but it's Enamorous Theory in time as Trick Room goes back up, yet 2 damage onto Enam. Crest keeps healing it up, and Dazzling Gleam is doing so much damage it hangs on with 4% even after a couple of Supercell slams, and finishes off the last 2 months. Good prep from the Agrons, never bet against them in the regular season, except probably against Steve and I. Next match, the CL Steamrollers just can't get it together, and they don't have enough to overcome the onslaught from the resurgent Summit County Psyducks, who notched their first win of the season. Palafin out for Pelipper turn 1, Taurus' Will-O-Wisp goes into Zapdos, who switched in for Azumarill, and Farigiraf gets up the Trick Room. Pelipper protects, but the Farigiraf Psychic surprisingly Oko's Tauros anyways. Pelipper goes down the next turn, plus Farigiraf to avoid the Sandseer Storm. That is a tragedy. Last turn of Trick Room, Tornadus goes down without doing a thing, and Zapdos hangs on from a Lando Sledge Bomb. Terra Grass Palafin helps it survive a Zapdos T-Bolt, and both it and Lando hit the Ozu, switching in for Farigiraf, but Hurricane does huge damage into that Palafin. Palafin finally removes Zapdos next turn, and good protect on Lando to save it from Azumarill. Palafin Drain Punch into the other slot doesn't connect, so Ozu can Ice Spinner take down Palafin. Sandstorm Storm finally does good damage, Okoing the Entei that switched in and hitting Farigiraf next to Muddy Water from the Kingdra, but the Giraffe lives on 1, so it gets off a Dazzling Gleam. It's going to come off do good damage. Whimsicott gets off Tailwind as it goes down, and Shenpao plus Farigiraf will finish this game off. Well played by the Psyducks. They are on the board. And finally, the Newport Noctows are going to continue their rampage as well with a quick win over the previously undefeated Miltanks. Turn 1 is all Miltanks as Hitmonlee Fake Out flinches Excadrill. Hippo misses the Stonehenge on Araquanid, which gets up Sticky Web. However, as Iron Boulder comes in, Hitmonlee is OHKO'd by high horsepower. The speed tiers don't quite work out there. Rapid Spin removes the webs the next turn. Iron Boulder with the rock move into the drill slot doesn't do much, and Hippo and Glowbro trade about 2/3 of each other's HP pools. Quick Draw means Hippo goes down as Hydrapple tanks a hit for Iron Boulder, but Rock Slide plus Ice Punch from Iron Hands gets 2 KOs. Enam and Stellar won't change the Iron Head OHKO outcome as Wild Charge OHKO's Araquanid, and that means Excadrill stays in the field all game. With the KO's Iron Boulder, clean 5-0 from the Noctowls. That is everything that happened in Week 2. A lot of fun matches here for sure. how much is that going to shake things up in the power rankings? Well, we've got still the same number one, and I think we should probably just start there, Steve. The Incineroar, another very solid win, keeping their number one overall spot. But I think we did actually talk about it a little bit this time, yeah?
Yeah, we did talk about it. Some of these other teams at like 2 and 3 are showing some great promise, but just our kind of confidence in the Incineroar and their familiarity with doubles, as well as the play we've seen so far, was enough to keep them at number one. They're doing what they need to win the games. Maybe things could be a little better at times, but they haven't yet had an opponent to take advantage of that, which that could just be, they're not expecting it yet, and maybe they'll kick it up the next year later. But as for now, things are going great for them, and until they lose, I don't foresee them dropping from the spot.
Plus, that week one win against Psyducks looking a little bit better here as well. We should talk about the 2 and 3 slots next. The Calgary Cor and Terrifier Heatwave beating a couple of pretty solid teams here, actually, too. Talk about the ordering of these two, why they fall just behind the number one, and why we still put these two teams a little bit ahead of the number 4 slot, Steve.
Yeah, the 2 and 3, Calgary and Terrifier, both have very similar results. A win over a 1 and 1 team, a win over an 0 and 2 team, kind of equally, roughly equal competition in both cases, both all being fairly dominant wins. It really came down between the two of them to a little bit of our past experience with Calgary and the success they had last season, but also their opponents this season. Calgary did play against the Close Combat Club, who, if you look and cheat and look a little bit towards the bottom, are ranked above the Route 1 Burbs, who the Terrifier Heatwave played. That really was kind of enough of a difference for us. But the 2 and 3 right now are very close. These two could easily flip-flop if everything stays the same week to week, with just minor updates to how we're feeling about them on that day.
Yeah, and rounding out the top 6 here, spoilers, these are all the 2 and 0 teams. The Agrons at 4, Bouffalant at 5, Noctowls at 6. Bouffalant jumping over the Noctowls, but Agrons remain the same. I guess it's more so that the Bouffalant fall less than the Noctowls. This was all kind of nebulous, even the first week, those 9 slots that were all 1 and 0. So now with all these 2 and 0 teams, it's less of a fall all the way down there, right, rather than just kind of trying to figure out where everyone should belong. And frankly, the wins that these teams have aren't quite as impressive as the other ones, at least in terms of quality of opponents here, Steve. Is that correct?
That is correct. These teams, most of them, still have wins against 1 and 1 and 0 and 2 teams. The exception, of course, being the Agrons, who have beat 2 0 and 2 teams. Their thing's a little bit different, though, where they've played and beat the Bouldors, who have only lost to 2 and 0 teams. So if the Agrons and Incineroar are the best teams, the Bouldors could, in theory, be the third best team in the league. And then the Agrons also defeated the Corviknight Clobberers, who, a strong showing team from last season, off to a rough start so far, but perhaps they're able to pull it back moving forward. But yeah, the Agrons, they're showing that usual strong regular season, enough so that we gave them a slight edge over the Bouffalant and Noctowls, who have wins over historically weak teams and then wins over all-right teams. I'll put myself at all-right for the season. It hasn't been great for me so far. But yeah, kind of the difference, just the Bouffalant and Noctowls had very similar schedules. I gave the slight edge to the Bouffalant as their historically strong opponent was myself, who's been doing a little bit better than the Noctowls opponent of the Steamrollers and their 1 and 0 opponent of the Mighty Miltank, or 1 and 1, I guess, at this point. So all in all, all 3 of these teams are very close in our minds, but this was the order we settled on when we have to pick something for the power rankings.
And these top 6 teams are, once again, the 2 and 0 teams, and I think we also agree that there's a little bit of a gap, actually. We have a lot of problems with a bunch of the 1 and 1 teams. There were a couple here to pick between, but we ended up deciding on the Close Combat Club with their big bounce back after struggling week 1 to fit in the number 7 slot, and the Psyducks with their big bounce back win as well, fitting in at number 8. Tell us about these, and if we have any honorable mentions, Steve.
Yeah, the club at 7, they did pick up a win, and notably they are the only 1 and 1 team that has a win over another team that has any wins. Their win over the 1 and 0 Wooper Boopers this past week. So that really, to me at least, pushed them to the top 1 and 1 team and kind of gave them that number 7 spot for us. But their play seemed fairly all right for this past week, but still a lot of questions about the week one. With only 2 weeks, that's still weighing heavily on our mind. So we'll certainly have to keep that in mind looking forward. Number 8, the Summit County Psyducks get a bounce-back win against the historically strong Steamrollers, while also their loss to the Incineroar still looking like one of the best losses they could have had, with the Incineroar looking so good. So, both these teams make sense. Shout out to the number 9 Route 1 Burbs in a similar boat. Win over an 0-2 team, lost to a 2-0 team, right there in the middle. They're kind of, in our minds, grouped with the 7 and 8, but we felt the club and Psyducks were slightly above them right now. But again, that could easily change come week 3.
And I suppose then we should take a look at the overall standings right now. We talked about those top 6 2-0 teams, and then we're actually split evenly in thirds there, as we also have a bunch of 1-1 teams. So according to standings, Terrifier Heatwave up top there, plus 11, almost the maximum that they could have, followed by the Agrons at plus 10, Noctels and Incineroar at plus 9, Corviknight plus 8, Bouffalant at plus 7, and you see already just a big drop off, but that's what happens. You only have 2 games, and the difference between 2-0 and 1-1. WOBFETS, Club, and Boopers all at even 0, Psyducks at -1, Burbs and Miltanks are at -3. But if the playoffs were to start right now, for some reason, if we did it after 2 weeks instead of 8, we would have all these teams in, which is kind of neat here to take a look at. Not too big of a difference between this and the power rankings still. There's still really not that much data to go on for power rankings, but is there anything of note here, Steve, that you want to talk about or cover there between discrepancies or notable mentions or omissions or anything like that?
There are some differences. The Incineroar all the way down at 4 in the standings, which that isn't accurate for. They have only picked up 11 KOs in their 2 matches so far. So they are 1 short of the Noctellus 12 and would lose that tiebreaker. But, that's just the differential right now. I certainly still think stand by them at number 1. We'll see what more weeks show. Every team, getting more chances to lose or establish some better differential or worse differential. And at the end, if there's, 4 teams that are 8-0, that's just what it is. Hopefully the schedule is diverse enough where some of these teams play each other, and that won't be the case. But I can't guarantee it won't.
Shout out to the schedule maker for making a good one, as always, no matter what ends up happening here. Yeah, it may still take another week or 2 for us to get a better, clearer picture of what's going on and to see how dire some teams' needs are. But we only need 1 more week here to see what will happen in week 3. So let's take a look at the schedule coming up here, Steve. There are not too many particularly high-profile matches, but I think there are some that are definitely of interest that could still shake things up pretty significantly here. What do you have your eye on?
I'll give my first shout out to the match of brothers, the Corviknight Clobbers and the Terrifier Heatwave. Heatwave coming out strong, as mentioned, never losing a Wooper Club match so far. And the Clobbers having a rough start this season, 0-2, facing their brother. Actually, a spoiler for behind the scenes, that match is going on right now as we're recording this. So as we finish, there will be an answer to this, but that's one I'm very excited for and to see how it comes out. The other match I'll shout out is the Newport Noctellus and Wooper Boopers. Wooper Boopers got a early win, going 1-1 so far. I think they have a reasonable chance to upset the Noctellus at 2-0, but the Noctellus are still definitely the favorite. And it's one of those, there's a lot of these matches that are kind of interesting, and that would definitely be one of those I'd put in that category.
Yeah, in that same vein, we didn't quite put you on the power rankings here, Steve, but you are a 1-1 team, historically pretty strong, going up against a 2-0 Calgary Cor team that could use a really nice win like this to potentially make a case to crack up even higher and to potentially fight with the Incineroar, separate themselves from the Terrifier Heatwave, something of that nature, whereas a big win for you would really start to separate yourself from the 1-1 teams up above there and give you a big leap up in the standings as well. I guess the other one I'll shout out is going to be the Combat Club and the Steamrollers. Steamrollers really need to get off the ground here. The play has been a little bit sketchy here so far, pretty basic, and the club could provide an interesting opportunity for them, while at the same time the club just need to continue to ride this momentum, and we already saw that we have them as one of our favorite 1-1 teams. This is a nice chance to get a relatively good established win over somebody and start to continue to move up the rankings there in the 1-1s. Steamrollers might be your last chance to get on the power rankings all season if you drop to 0-3. But that's going to do it for us here. So as your Week 2 recap, Week 2 power rankings. Next week, we've got the Week 3 matches going up here. Don't forget to check out the match of the week as well from the Route 1 Burbs. We'll see you next week.